Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Dories. I'm the artistic director of Theater of War Productions. We're a social impact company that uses theater as a tool for helping communities address pressing public health and social issues. We have over 25 projects based mostly in classical texts like the one you're going to hear tonight that serve as a catalyst for conversations that wouldn't have happened had we not performed otherwise. And we're thrilled that you could join us tonight for the premiere of our newest initiative, the Oedipus Project. Before getting started, I just want to take a moment to thank our co-presenters, the Office of the New York City Public Advocate, Jumaane Williams, the Brooklyn Public Library, who's been a steadfast partner and supporter of ours for many years, and a special thanks to our longtime supporter, the Stavros Niarchos Foundation. Sophocles' Oedipus the King was performed in the spring of 429 BC, a year after a plague ravaged Athens, killing nearly 1/3 of the Athenian population. The play deals with themes that appear as relevant now as they were 2,500 years ago, and so we are presenting scenes from this ancient play to serve as a catalyst for an open conversation about the impact of the COVID pandemic on individuals, families, and diverse communities. Tonight's event will unfold in 3 parts. First, the actors who have gathered here tonight will read scenes from Oedipus the King. Tonight we have with us a group of incredible performers, part of a company of now over 250 actors under the umbrella of Theater of War Productions. And tonight's actors include Francis McDormand, John Turturro, Oscar Isaac, Jeffrey Wright, Frankie Faison, Glenn Davis, David Strathern, and Marjolaine Goldsmith, as well as our secret weapon, New York City's public advocate, Jumaane Williams. These actors are going to be performing from their homes in New York, New Jersey, Chicago, Massachusetts, Florida, and California. And we don't want to in any way take for granted the technology that is bringing us together across such disparate places. We know we have people calling in and zooming in from Australia, from Europe, from Africa, from South America, from ports all over the United States. And we're so delighted that we have a tool during this time of isolation to be together and to share in this ancient story. When the actors are done with their performance of Oedipus the King, which will take about 1 hour and 10 minutes, depending on whether we get through it without any technical glitches, when they're done, they will be replaced by 4 community panelists who will respond in the moment from their guts and their hearts to what they heard and saw in the performance that resonated with them across time. We have 4 amazing individuals who will serve as our community panelists tonight, who are on the front lines of the pandemic in New York City, and we're grateful to them for their service during the day and their being with us here tonight. Following these panelists' brief remarks, we'll open the floor to what we expect to be close to 10,000 people, the largest audience for whom we've ever performed. We'll open the floor to what we hope will be a lively, healing, constructive discussion with you, the audience. And I'm going to say this a few times throughout the event, so don't worry if you just caught a word of this now, but during the discussion, I'm going to ask questions as the facilitator about the play and how it resonates with you today. And if you'd like to respond to one of my questions as I ask it, we'll ask that you use the raise your hand function for most people at the bottom of your screen on Zoom to indicate that you have something to say. And when you do that for each question, we'll call upon a number of people who raise their hands and promote them to the screen along with the community panelists for the duration of your remarks. I want to mention and also thank our closed captioner and indicate that closed captioning is available tonight for those of you who might want it or need it. That's also available at the bottom of your screen. I also want to take a second just to acknowledge that this is new territory for us. It's a new way of performing. It's a new way of communicating. So we're going to apologize in advance for the fact that we may not be able to get to everyone who raises their hands. And likely over the span of the performance and discussion, there may be glitches or technical issues that come up during the event. That's okay. Making mistakes and overcoming them is at the center of Theater of War Productions' model. Our hope is that by making mistakes and then adapting and moving on from them, we can model for you as an audience what we hope you'll do during discussion. Take the risk, of saying something you've never said before. Take the risk of not sounding brilliant, of possibly stumbling on your own words, and maybe making a mistake in service of expressing your own truth and perspective. So we revel in our mistakes, and if the screen freezes, then everybody gets a bonus. And we'll recover and we'll get back right into the performance like it just happened. And we've been constructing this from our homes across space and across time. So we're just grateful to be with you here tonight. And we know that you'll show us deference and you'll show us patience as we struggle through our own individuated worlds to express our truths and Sophocles' truths to you. We hope that you'll join us in not sounding brilliant and polished, and be present with us even in isolation as a community without judgment and in shared vulnerability. This is what makes us human. This is what makes us able to adapt, and it is the only way we'll ever get out of this mess. So before getting started, here's what you need to know about Sophocles' Oedipus the King. 16 years ago, before the play begins, Oedipus traveled from Corinth to the oracle at Delphi in search of his true identity. After visiting the oracle, he traveled on to Thebes, which at the time was under the attack of a bloodthirsty sphinx, a scary and horrible monster with the head of a woman and the body of a lion and the wings of a bird, for which had been terrorizing the city and murdering its citizens for some time. Oedipus defeats the Sphinx by answering its riddle correctly. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening? Man, he replies, freeing the people of Thebes from Sphinx forever. And as a reward, Oedipus is made king of Thebes and married to their queen, Turturro. Fast forward 18 years, the city of Thebes is under attack yet again, this time by a plague, a pestilence that has been killing the people, the livestock, the crops. The citizens of Thebes all gather in front of the palace with songs and prayers. And now they are standing at the steps of the palace, waiting to ask Oedipus to save the city once again. Without further ado, scene 1 from our adaptation of Sophocles' Oedipus the King.
Children of Thebes, why are you here, kneeling with wreaths at my feet as the city air thickens with songs and smoke, incense and hymns drifting low over lamentations and groans? It would have been wrong, my children, to somehow hear this from others. That is why I, Oedipus, whose legend is known throughout the land, I've come to hear it from you. Rise, old priest, and speak for the rest, and your right by seniority. As some sudden terror or unforeseen fear sent you scurrying here, rest assured I will do whatever I can to help, for I would truly be callous if I felt nothing for men like you, bending in supplication in front of me at the palace steps.
Oedipus, our king, we see beggars of all ages huddled at your altars. Boys too young to walk on their own, feeble old men hunched over with age, unmarried youths selected to serve, and priests of Thebes, of which I am one. Many others are now gathered at the center of the city, bearing branches at the temple of Athena or on the banks of the river Isthmus, where Apollo speaks in riddles through the smoke. Look, and you will see a storm-battered city, drowning in an ocean of blood, no longer able to keep her head above the cresting waves. A savage pestilence has ravaged the land, killing the cattle and the crops. Our women die in labor, delivering shriveled little corpses as the hateful plague spreads like a raging wildfire, devouring the city without mercy, emptying homes and filling the streets with moans and wailing and heaps of rotting bodies as death-rich Hades makes off with the shades. We who kneel at your feet do not pray to you as a god, but as the best of men, which you have shown through your actions and dealings with the divine. You came to our city and, without guidance or advice, released us from the deadly tribute we had long been paying that unsparing singer, the bloodthirsty Sphinx. You lifted us back up, restoring our hope, answering our prayers. Surely this was done with the help of a god. We come again, Oedipus, vulnerable and weak, bowing our heads to ask for your protection. Use your unmatchable strength to save us from this plague. Maybe you received a message from a god or even some man, perhaps a counselor who advises you during times of crisis. Tell us what you know. Lift up the city again, best of men. We still call you savior because of your past actions. Do not let the present calamity strip you of your rightful title. Ensure that you are remembered for all time as a great leader, not as one who helped us stand only to let us fall. You started this! Now finish the story. Put us back on the path to health and prosperity. Years ago you arrived like an auspicious omen, reversing our fortune in an instant. Do it again, Oedipus. Rule our land as is your right, but preside over the living, not the dead. For if you continue down the current path, there will soon be no one left to rule. A city, like a ship, is nothing without men within its walls.
Children, I am sorry. I know. How could I not have known what brought you here? Sick as you are, none of you is sicker than I. Your pain is singular contained. Each of you must suffer on his own, but my soul aches for the whole city, for you and for me. No, you did not wake me from slumber. It is hard to sleep when you have been weeping, and your mind is reeling, exploring every angle, searching for a solution. Alone with my thoughts for many long nights, I did the only thing that seemed reasonable. I sent my brother-in-law Creon to Delphi to ask the oracle what I must say or do to save the city. But too many days have now passed since he set out, and I'm starting to worry that something has happened to him on the road home. It's not like him to be late. But when he finally arrives, I would be a weak leader if I did not follow the gods' orders.
Oh, what timing! Those men just waved to say that Creon has crested the hill.
Lord Apollo, may he arrive smiling brightly, his eyes beaming with good fortune.
The news must be favorable. Why else would he be wreathed with laurels?
We will know soon enough. He's almost here. Lord Creon, my brother, my friend, what message do you bring us from the god?
A favorable one, for even news that is at first hard to hear can prove auspicious, as long as it all works out in the end.
Your words fill me with neither fear nor relief. What exactly did he say?
I could say it here in front of these men if you like, or perhaps we could go inside.
Say it now, in front of us all. Their lives mean more to me than mine.
But here is what I heard the oracle say as clearly as I am speaking to you now. Apollo commands us to exorcise a vile pollution from our land, a metastasizing cancer that we have long harbored unwittingly for many years, nurturing and feeding it like a growing fetus while it makes us all sick. We must stop the contamination from spreading any further, or the city will never be cured.
And how do we treat the disease? What remedy or ritual will cleanse the city of this vile pollution?
By exile or execution, we must expiate the murder that brought this blood storm upon us.
Who was murdered, and by whom?
Before you arrived and saved the city, a king named Laius ruled this land.
I know, I had heard of him, but I never saw him.
He was murdered, left to die in the dirt, and now the god commands us in no uncertain terms to punish those who killed him, no matter who they are.
But how on earth will we find them? The crime took place so long ago. The evidence has grown cold.
Apollo said to look in Thebes. What we seek will be found. What we ignore will evade our eyes.
Where did Laius die? In the palace, in the mountains, or on foreign soil?
Left for Delphi to see the oracle, or so people said. He never returned.
Did anyone witness the crime who we could question? Perhaps one of his fellow travelers?
Only one survived, and he was so shaken by what he had seen that he said very little.
What did he say? Even something small or seemingly insignificant could put us on the path to learning more.
He said that Laius died not at the hands of one, but at the hands of many highwaymen who ambushed them from all sides.
But why would a highwayman dare to kill a king Unless, of course, he was hired and paid by someone here in Thebes.
The thought certainly crossed our minds, but after Laius died, we were leaderless and lost with no one to help us deal with our then present problems.
I don't understand. Your king was dead. What problems kept you from mounting a full investigation into his murder?
The riddling Sphinx forced us to focus on what was right in front of us instead of what lay behind us, hidden in the shadows.
Then I will shine a light into the darkness of the past, illuminate it all. Apollo is right, and so are you, to show such concern for the murdered king. I will now join you in the struggle for justice and once again stand up for the city of Thebes as the god commands. I will purge us of this pollution, not on behalf of some distant relation, but selfishly, on my own behalf. For whoever killed Laius may one day try to kill me. By defending him, I protect myself. Come, children, rise quickly and remove your branches and wreaths. Someone go gather the people of Thebes, knowing that I will do everything in my power to solve this mystery and uncover the truth. With the gods' help, we will either succeed or we will all perish.
Stand up, children. We've heard the words we came for. Now it is up to the God, the one who sent the prophecy to save us from this plague.
Sweet word of God, which drafts up in vapors from the darkest depths into the Pythian priestess who sits on earth's navel, breathing in the fumes and exhaling your riddles that sail down the wind from golden Delphi into glorious Thebes. I'm trembling with terror, reeling with fear. Lord Apollo, Delian healer, I now bow before your awe-inspiring power. What do you have in store for us? And when will it end? What must we do to appease your anger? A single sacrifice or year-round rituals in your honor? Tell me, eternal oracle, offspring of golden hope. I call upon Athena, daughter of Zeus, and her son Artemis, well known throughout Thebes, who watches over us all from the throne above the city. I call upon Apollo, the archer, whose arrows never miss. All three appear and protect me from death, as you have in the past when annihilation seemed almost certain, and you came at last to extinguish the flames just before they swallowed the city. Come to us again. Our suffering is beyond measure. The people of Thebes are sick, and no one can find the words to cure the disease, nor scalpel, nor sword that will halt its progression. The crops wither and the fields grow fallow. Our women cry out, straining under the relentless pain of labor, but never give birth. The people are dying. You can see them dropping here and there faster than a ravenous fire, plummeting like wide-winged birds from the sky to the distant shores of Hades, land of gloom and shadows. Immeasurable death overwhelms our city. The corpses of children lie rotting in the streets, unburied, with no one left to mourn them or tend to their bodies. White-haired widows and young mothers gather around altars, groaning and wailing and begging for an end to their endless suffering. Hymns to the healer can be heard throughout the city over shrieks of grief and weeping. Please, Athena, daughter of Zeus, fill us with hope, deliver us from death. I call out to Ares, the savage god of war who attacks innocent civilians without swords or shields, scorching the earth around us, burning us back to ashes. Leave our land and abandon your assault upon the city, for open waters in the west are the ragged cliffs and exposed covers of Thrace. Those who are spared by night, he stalks and kills by the light of day. I call upon Zeus, Father of all, destroy him from above with a blazing bolt of lightning. I call out to Apollo, rain down your arrows with your golden bow, defend us from death.
You have made a request. With regard to your request, If you are willing to listen and do as I say, adhering to the treatment that I will now prescribe for the disease, then you may soon be saved, relieved of your suffering. I will speak these words as a stranger to the crime and the story that surrounds it. Also, without evidence or something small to go on, it would have been impossible, even at the time when it happened, to properly investigate the murder, be that as it may. I arrived and became a citizen of Thebes only after the fact. And so I call upon you, my fellow citizens, descendants of Cadmus, whoever knows what happened to King Laius on that fateful day, who killed him, and how he came to die, step forward and reveal the truth to me. If you are afraid to speak, worried that you might somehow incriminate yourself and become your own executioner, know this: if you speak, no violence will be brought upon you. If you step forward now, you have my word. You will be allowed to leave Thebes in peace without so much as a scratch. Or if one of you knows the culprit to be a foreigner, a stranger from another land, tell me his name, and I will show you how I reward honesty with gratitude and ample compensation. But if one of you knows and refuses to break the silence, rejecting the offer now waiting on the table, in order to protect a relative, a friend, or even yourself, listen closely and hear how I will deal with you. I hereby proclaim that no one living within this land over which I rule as sovereign king will house you or speak to you or so much as look in your direction. You no longer exist. You may not join us in prayers or make sacrifices to the gods or cleanse yourself with holy water. You will be evicted from our homes and routed out of the city as the source of our festering infection, which the oracle has now just made known to us. This is how I will honor the God and defend the man whom you murdered, struggling alongside them both for justice. I now curse the murderer, whoever he may be, a lone man or a band of conspirators. I also curse myself. If I have somehow harbored the criminal within my home unwittingly, may I then be treated no differently than any of you. I command you to obey this decree, not only on my behalf, but for Apollo and for the city, which has been brought to its knees, begging for mercy by an angry God, exacting his wrath upon our people. It's the right thing to do. Even if the oracle had not spoken, it was wrong of you to leave that murder unsolved. You should have hunted the killer down and brought him to justice. The blood of your king demands it. But now that I sit on the throne, where he once sat, enjoying his power, as well as his wife, who has borne me beautiful children, I see that had he been luckier with regard to his offspring, and had he not been taken down by fate, our children would have shared a mother. And in this respect, I regard him as my father, and shall fight for him as such, leaving no stone unturned in my tireless search for his murderer. For those who refuse to heed my words, I invoke this curse. May your crops dry up and die, and your women's wombs be barren forever, and may you all be erased from this earth by the hateful plague or something worse. But for those who obey and approve of my actions, may justice remain on our side and the gods look favorably upon us forever.
I will speak, since you have cursed me if I don't. I did not kill King Laios, nor do I know who did. But it seems to me that the search for the murderer should fall to the God who sent us the prophecy.
Fair enough, but no man can force the gods to act if they're not willing.
Then may I suggest another approach?
As many as you'd like, speak and don't hold back.
The one with the greatest insight into what Apollo sees and says is Tiresias. Maybe if you ask for his help, he might pull back the veil and illuminate the truth.
Rest assured, I haven't been sitting on my hands. At Creon's urging, I already sent for him. But I must admit, it's taking far longer than I expected for him to appear.
Everything else is hazy, unsubstantiated rumor.
What else have you heard? I want to inspect every story.
It has been said that King Laos was murdered by highwaymen.
I've heard that as well, but where is the murderer?
If the man feels fear, he'll come out of hiding when he hears your curses.
If he wasn't afraid of the deed, he won't be afraid of my words.
Here comes the one who will name him, the holy seer Tiresias, by whom the gods have imbued the truth, is now being led this way.
Tiresias, you who perceive all things, that which can be understood by the human mind and that which is beyond our comprehension, things in the heavens and things on earth. You who are blind but see our present troubles clearly and know how terribly the people suffer, ravaged by this awful pestilence. You are our protector, our savior, our only hope for survival. If by chance you haven't heard the news from one of our messengers, we sent for word from Apollo. Here's what he sent us in return. Until we track down the men who long ago killed Laius and either execute them or expel them from Thebes, we will never find relief from this disease. Speak freely. Tell us all that you know from consulting the birds or any other method of divining the future that you have mastered. Save yourself and the city. Save me. Save us all from the foul pollution spreading from the dead man's corpse. We are in your hands. The noblest calling is to help others in need with your gifts.
Oh, how terrible it is to know when in the end knowing gains you nothing. I knew this once, but must have somehow forgotten, or else I never would have come.
What is the matter? Why the heavy heart?
Send me home. Dispatch me from this place. It will be easier that way. You can bear your burden, and I mine.
That would not only be against the law, but hostile to the city that has nourished and cared for you all these years, since you would be concealing what you know.
Because I see that your words will lead us down the wrong road, and I do not wish to follow you there.
If you know something, please, by the gods, we are begging on our knees, do not turn your back on us.
Oh, you know nothing. I will never reveal the riddles within me or the evil within you.
What did you just say? You know, but refuse to speak and would rather betray us and leave Thebes in ruins?
I refuse to inflict pain upon myself by inflicting it on you. Your questions are useless, and you will learn nothing from continuing to question me.
Worst of the worst, vilest of the vile, you could provoke a lifeless stone to lose its temper. Will you never speak? Or would you prefer to be seen as obstinate and without feelings?
Say what you will about me or my temper, but you are unaware of the one with which you live.
Who could listen to your brazen insults and your outright contempt for the city and not be enraged?
It will all unfold on its own, even if I remain silent.
Then why not tell me all that you know?
I will say nothing else. Therefore, feel free to spew all your vitriol and rage in my direction.
Fine, I will. I am so furious that I will now say everything on my mind. I believe that you were responsible for Laius' murder. You planned it, and while you may not have strangled him with your hands, make no mistake, they are stained with his blood. If you weren't blind, I would say you did it on your own.
And I say that you should obey your own decree, and from this moment forward, turn away from me and these people and never speak to us again, since you are the unholy contagion plaguing this land.
How shameful it is for a man of your stature to tell lies and fabricate stories. Do you actually believe that you'll get away with it?
I already have. The power of truth resides within me.
And from whom did you learn this? Certainly it wasn't derived from consulting the birds.
From you, who made me speak against my will.
Say it again. I want to hear it clearly.
Did you not hear me the first time? Or are you trying to trap me?
No, I didn't catch it all. Speak. Say it again.
I say that you are the murderer for whom you are searching.
You will not say that twice and walk away unscathed.
Would you like me to say more and feed your rage?
You say whatever you'd like. Your words mean nothing to me now.
I say You are living in shameful relation with your closest kin, but you do not know it. You cannot see evil within your own home.
Do you really think that you can continue to spew such filth with immunity?
Yes, the truth is strong enough to protect me.
That much is true, but you know nothing of the truth, since you are blind in your ears, blind in your eyes, blind in your mind.
How sad. All of these insulting words will soon be spoken about you by your own people.
Since you dwell in the darkness of permanent night, no man who sees the light of day will ever be damaged by you.
It is not your fate to fall because of me. Apollo will take care of that.
Whose idea was it to make these shameful accusations? Was it yours, Creon's, or perhaps someone else?
Creon is not your enemy. You are.
Wealth, power, unsurpassed skill. These are the things that men like you always envy, harboring hatred for those who wear the crown. I did not ask for it. It was given to me freely by the people of Thebes as a gift. And now Creon, my loyal friend from the very beginning, has hatched a secret plan to expel me from office, all the while desiring it for himself. He is the one who sent this snake oil salesman, this so-called expert, this psychic in assassin's beggar's clothes who can see plainly enough when it comes to making a profit, but is bankrupt and blind when it comes to his craft. Tell me, Tiresias, if you are truly a prophet, where were you when the savage Sphinx was attacking these people? Why didn't you simply answer her riddle and liberate the city from the terror if you are so wise? Why were you so quiet? The riddle required real vision and insight. And in your silence, you were shown to be lacking in both. It's all a scam. You know nothing about interpreting birds, let alone the will of the gods. It was I, Oedipus, who supposedly knows nothing, who arrived here and immediately stopped the Sphinx, using reason and wit to answer her riddle. I had no help from your feathered friends. And now you wish to throw me from the throne, hoping to stand closest to Creon when he wears the crown. You and your co-conspirator, I think, will soon lament the day you concocted the plot to drive the pollution from this land. And if you weren't such a silly, senile old man, you would have already learned the danger of your behavior by suffering gravely on account of it.
It seems, Oedipus, that you have both spoken out in anger. This is not what the city needs. Instead, we should be all investigating the God's prophecy and how best to fulfill it.
Though you are king, we remain equal in at least one respect. The power to refute accusations word for word, for I am not your slave, nor do I serve Creon as you suggest. I answer to Loxias Apollo, who is my only master. And since you have made light of my blindness, I say that you are the one who is blind. You cannot see the evil that surrounds you, the iniquity within your home, or the identity of the person with whom you live. Do you even know where you came from, or the names of your parents? You are an enemy to your own, above and below the earth, and you don't even know it. The dreadful double-edged curse of your mother and father will one day send you stumbling from this land. You may see the light now, but you will soon be pitched into utter darkness. And on that day, the day when you finally discover the truth about your marriage, that profane harbor into which you once sailed on strong, steady winds, your shrieking and bellowing will be heard throughout the world, echoing and reverberating over the peaks of Mount Kithaeron. There are even worse horrors on the horizon for you and your family, unimaginable evils that will wipe out your entire line, destroying you along with your children. So feel free to continue slandering me and Creon for the things I've said. You will be ground down to powder, and no man will suffer as savagely as you.
That's it. I'm done. I can no longer stand the sound of this man's blathering. Leave. Go. Stumble away from my home, back to where you came from, and die.
Had you not called for me, I would never have come.
Had I known how stupidly you would speak, I never would have sent for you.
Maybe I am stupid, as you say, but your parents, the ones who gave you life, thought me wise.
Wait, what do you mean? Who were my parents?
This day will birth you and destroy you.
See, you speak only in riddles, purposefully obscuring your meaning.
No, you're not an expert in answering riddles?
Keep trying to provoke me, and you will see what makes me great.
Your greatness will destroy you.
A small price to pay for saving the city.
Then I will go. Boy, lead me away.
Yes, boy, lead him away from this place. You've been nothing but a headache since you came, and I will be relieved to see you go.
I am going, but not before saying one last thing, which I will speak without fear, for you are not the man who will destroy me. The man you've been searching for, tracking him down and routing him out with threats, curses, and proclamations, the one who killed King Laius, he is here now in Thebes. He is known as an outsider who came from another country, but it will soon be revealed that he is actually Theban by birth. But he will find no comfort in this discovery. Once wealthy and powerful, he will wander the open roads like a blind beggar, groping in the darkness, scratching his way around in the dirt with a stick. And he will soon discover himself to be both father and brother to his own children, husband and son to the woman who bore him, murderer and wife defiler to his father. You go inside, think it over. And if you find that I'm wrong, tell everyone I'm a blind old fool whose prophecies mean nothing.
People of Thebes, I have come here in outrage and indignation after hearing the unjust allegations which Oedipus has leveled against me.
You, how dare you show your hateful face upon the palace steps, a murderer and attempted assassin who believed he could overtake me and throw me from my throne. Tell me, have you so little regard for me or my intelligence that you actually thought I wouldn't notice? When you snuck up from behind in the shadows and hatched your plan, did you foolishly presume that once I knew it was you, I would stand by idly, or that I would not defend myself or retaliate with everything at my disposal? What on earth were you thinking when you set out to depose a ruler without money in your pockets or an army at your back? Any idiot can tell you that it takes wealth and the loyal support of the people to win a kingdom.
Here is a thought. Why don't you listen openly to what I am about to say, refuting your accusations word for word, and then when I am done, render your judgment.
You are a skilled speaker, and I am a poor listener when it comes to hearing out men who are clearly plotting against me.
First, listen to this.
First, do not expect me to believe that you are not a traitor.
If you think being pig-headed and unyielding is a good idea at this moment, then you are not thinking straight.
If you think you can attempt to harm a relative and not pay the price, then you have lost your mind.
I won't argue with that. But what exactly have I done? I want to hear it in your own words.
Did you or did you not convince me that I should send for the so-called seer?
Yes, and I would do it again.
How long has it been since Laius...
Did what? I don't follow your words.
was murdered?
Well, many years have passed since it happened.
And at that time, was the seer actively practicing his craft?
Yes, he was equally revered as being just as wise then as he is now.
And did he ever mention my name?
Never in my presence.
Certainly you looked into the murder and searched everywhere for the killer.
Yes, of course, but we found nothing.
Then why didn't the wise prophet tell you everything then?
I don't know. And when I don't understand, I prefer to say nothing.
But there is something you know and could say if you were an honest man.
What is it? If you tell me, I will not refuse to share what I know.
That if he hadn't been colluding with you, he never would have accused me of murdering Laius.
Only you would know if that's what he said. But I invoke my right to question you, just as you have questioned me.
Go ahead, ask me whatever you wish. You will not prove me to be a murderer.
Are you married? to my sister?
If that is really a question, then the answer is yes.
And do you rule Thebes equally with her, sharing all of your power?
She gets whatever she wishes from me.
And am I not equal in power to you both?
That is why you are a backstabbing traitor and not a friend.
Not if you consider it from where I stand. Now think about it. Who would choose to be king and rule in constant fear if it were possible to share the sovereign's powers and yet still sleep soundly at night? I am not a man with ambition to be ruler, and yet I am treated like one by the people. I have all that I need and nothing to fear, but if I were king, I would be compelled to do many distasteful things against my wishes. Why would I lust after your throne when I already have power and sway without the burden that comes with responsibility? I would never be so crazy as to desire anything beyond what brings pleasure and profit. Everyone greets me. Men salute me. Anyone who wants something from you seeks out my advice, which always ensures a favorable outcome. Why would I give up what I have now in order to take on your problems? I have never contemplated trading places with you, nor would I consort with anyone who entertained such treasonous ideas. If you wish to verify what I have said, go to Delphi. Ask about the oracle and whether I related accurately. Then, if you should discover that I have plotted against you with the prophet, condemn me to die, not by a single vote, but by two, yours and mine. But do not convict me without evidence based on suspicion or a whim. It is not right to judge bad men good or good men bad. To throw away a loyal friend is to throw away your own life. In time, you will come to see all this clearly, since only unfolding time unveils the just, while the unrighteous are exposed in a single day.
Priam has spoken well, my lord, and offers you wise counsel for those who rush to judgment and act rashly without pausing to consider all sides of the story, often slip and hurt themselves.
When a conspirator sneaks up stealthily in the shadows, I must be quick to respond, for if I wait patiently for the plot to unfold, he will accomplish his mission and I will be defeated.
Are you actually planning to banish me from this land?
No, you are to be executed, not exiled.
Why are you filled of such envy and enmity for me?
You clearly do not believe my word. Do you seriously think I won't do it?
I think you have no idea what you are doing.
I am defending myself.
By attacking me!
You are a traitor!
You understand nothing!
Regardless, I am king.
Not for much longer if you choose to rule poorly.
I rule at the pleasure of the people, not you.
They are my people too. I share in your power.
Stop! I see Jocasta coming out of the house at precisely the right moment to intervene and help you resolve your differences.
What is wrong with you wretched men? You should be ashamed of yourself squabbling over private matters on the palace steps. There are people suffering out there, dying from the hateful plague. And this is what you choose to do with your time? Come inside. Now, you two, Creon. And we'll settle this thing in private. Both of you, quit making something out of nothing.
Sister, your husband Oedipus plans to inflict terrible punishments on me. Exile or death.
In this instance, he speaks the truth, for I caught him plotting evil schemes against me, intending to do me harm.
May I never again take pleasure in my life, but die horribly crushed under the weight of your curse, if I have ever committed any of the acts with which you have charged me.
By the gods, Oedipus, please believe him. Show some respect for the oath that he has sworn. Before the gods, believe him for me and for these people.
I beg you, Oedipus, listen to your wife and do what she asks.
What would you have me do?
Respect this man who was never petty or small in the past, and has only grown in stature since you've known him.
And you fully understand what you are asking me to do?
Yes.
Tell me in your own words.
Do not curse a loyal friend who has taken an oath to die by denying him the right to speak and defend himself.
Understand that you are asking for me to either die or be exiled.
I swear now before Helios, greatest of all the gods, may I die a wretched death, abandoned by all of my friends if I ever entertain such a horrible thought. My heart breaks for Thebes. The city has been devastated by an evil disease. Our people are already suffering in such unthinkable misery. Must you exacerbate our pain by pouring fuel on the flames?
Let him go. Let him go. Even if it means I will die or be banished from this land. Know that I have been moved by your words and not his, never his. For I will always hate him wherever he should go.
I'm relieved to see your rage finally begin to subside, though you clearly still simmer with hatred for me. Uncontrollable tempers such as yours are hardest on the men who possess them, and for good reason.
Will you not leave this place? Get out of my sight!
I will go. I am baffled by your actions, but grateful to these people for defending me.
My lady, why don't you follow him inside and make sure he's all right?
I will, as soon as you tell me what happened.
Things were said in ignorance, based on rumors. That caused their tempers to flare.
Both men.
That's right.
What things were said?
Things that need not be repeated for the good of this city. Just let it rest.
Do you now see what you've done in spite of your best intentions by taking his side and dampening my anger?
My lord, I have said it several times now, but please hear it again. I would be seen as a raving madman, an idiot, if I ever turned my back against you, who, when the city was battered by a sea of troubles, sailed us steadily back to shore. I only ask that you do it again.
What filled your heart with such rage? I'm begging you to explain what happened.
I will tell you, since I have more respect for you, my dear, than anyone else in the world. I just caught Creon plotting against me.
In what way?
He says that I murdered Laius.
Based on what? Knowledge or speculation?
He didn't stain his lips to say, but sent a false prophet to do his dirty work.
Then put your mind at ease, my lord, and listen to my story. No man possesses the gift of prophecy. I know this from experience and will prove it to you. Long ago, we received a prophecy, not from Apollo, but from one of his attendants, which said that Laius would die at the hand of his own son, our son, who was yet to be born. But as the story goes, Laius died at the hands of foreign highwaymen at the place where three roads meet. As for our son, 3 days after he was born, Laius pierced and bound his ankles and had him exposed on the remote side of the mountain. So you see, Apollo's prophecy never came true. Our son did not murder his father, and Laius did not die, as he had so feared, at the hands of his own son. This is what the priest predicted, and yet none of it came to pass. If the God wants to say something, he'll make it known by speaking to us directly, not through some intermediary.
Something that I heard you just say has shaken me deeply, sending a chill through my mind.
What was it? Why do you look so worried?
The place where three roads meet, is that where you said Laius died?
Yes, that was the story and still is to this day.
Where exactly did the murder take place?
The country of Phocis, where two roads running from Delphi and Daulis merge to become one.
And how long has it been since it happened?
It happened right before you arrived and became king.
Oh, Zeus, what have you done? What did you have in store for me all along?
What is it, Oedipus? Why are you clutching your chest in pain?
Not now. Not now, at least not yet. Laius, how old was he? And what did he look like?
about the same size as you and had black hair that was just starting to go white.
I am wretched. I have cursed myself, it seems, without knowing.
What are you saying? I'm afraid to look in your direction.
And I'm afraid the blind seer has a gift of sight. But tell me one more thing that will illuminate
I'm afraid
the
to say
truth.
another word. No, but ask, and I will answer if I can.
Were there many traveling with him on the road as would befit a king, or were there only a few?
There were 5 men. One was a messenger, and a lone wagon on which Laius rode.
I see. It couldn't be clearer now. From whom did you learn all of this?
A slave, the only one who survived.
And this slave, is he inside?
No. As soon as he returned and saw you sitting in Laius' throne, he fell to his knees, grasped my hand tightly, and begged me to send him to the countryside to toil in the pastures and fields so he could be as far away from here as possible. I sent him right away, for he deserved my blessing and more.
If you sent for him, would he return right away?
Yes, but first tell me why you wish to see him.
I'm afraid I have already said too much. This is why I wish to see him.
Then I will call for him, and he will come. But in turn, my lord, I think I deserve to know what is now weighing on you.
Indeed you do. And I will tell you everything now that we've almost reached the moment of truth, when all will be revealed. I can hardly wait for it to come. No one deserves to hear this more than you, for it concerns us both. My father was Polybus, my mother Merope. Both were from Corinth. I was always treated by the citizens with the greatest respect as the rightful heir to the throne, until one day something happened by chance, something strange, but at least on the surface not worth obsessing over. A man at a dinner, a drunk who had imbibed too much wine, lost control of his tongue and said that I was not my father's son. His words couldn't have upset me more. That night I lay in bed brooding. I could barely control my emotions. The next day I went straight to my parents and questioned them about what the man had said. Naturally, they were furious and punished him severely for mocking me. First, I found that comforting, but his words stayed with me, and for some reason, I couldn't seem to shake them, or the thought which had haunted me most, maybe he was right. So I slipped away from the palace and, without my parents knowing, went to Delphi to visit the oracle. But Apollo sent me home empty-handed, without answers to my vexing questions, tormenting me instead with an awful prophecy that I was fated to lie with my mother and spawn monstrous offspring so hideous and repugnant that men would avert their eyes whenever they were near. Finally, the oracle foretold that I would one day murder my own father, the one who gave me life. I packed my bags and ran away as fast as my feet would carry me, using the stars to chart a course as far away from Corinth as I could travel, so that I would never see that shameful fate predicted by the awful prophecy come to light. But soon, I came to the crossroads where you say Laius died, and here is the truth. As I approached the place where 3 roads meet, a messenger and a man in a wagon, just as you described, came barreling toward me and without any provocation tried to run me off the road. I lashed out in anger and managed to strike the driver as the wagon came racing my way, forcing me into the ditch. But when the older man saw that, he circled around and struck me in the head with his spiked goad and left me bleeding in the dirt. I paid him back, though, with interest, and before he knew what hit him, I swatted him with a stick and sent them flying backwards out of the wagon. Then I killed them all. So if this stranger was in fact Laius, what man alive could be more miserable than I, whom the gods loathe most? From this day forward, no foreigner, no citizen may host me in his home, or speak to me, or even acknowledge my pitiful existence. I will be driven from the city like a scourge. I have cursed myself and have no one else to blame. I am contaminating the bed of a corpse, which I strangled with these hands. I am stained, polluted, profaned. I am filthy. I am a virus a deadly infection spreading. I must be cast out of this country and never allowed to lay my eyes upon my parents or return home to Corinth where I was raised, for I fear I may not be able to stop myself from marrying my mother and slaughtering my father, the man who brought me into this world. This savage cruelty can only come from a merciless God. There is no other way to explain it. I call out to the heavens, to the holy ones seated on their thrones. Never let me see that hateful day! I'm begging you, but let me vanish from this earth before I see myself stained with such unspeakable actions.
Your words fill us with terror, my lord. But wait until you've heard from the man who was there before abandoning all hope.
Yes, the shepherd is my only hope. I must wait until he comes.
What do you expect him to say when he arrives?
If he repeats what you told me, then I will be saved.
What did you hear me say that was so consequential?
You said that he spoke of highwaymen killing Laius. So if he corroborates that story and sticks to the number, then I could not have been the killer, for one is different from many. But if he speaks of a single man, a lone murderer, then clearly the story points towards me.
Well, that was what he said, and he cannot take it back, for I was not alone in hearing him say it. The whole city heard. But even if he should change his story in some small way, it would not change anything, for Apollo's prophecy stated that Laius would be slaughtered by my son. But my poor baby didn't kill anyone. He met his death long before Laius. After that day, when he was sent away to die on the side of a mountain, I never gave much thought to prophecies. And neither should you.
That's all very reasonable, my lady, and well spoken, but someone please go get the shepherd before I lose my patience.
I will send for him right away, my lord. But while we wait, let's go inside for a while. I hope you know I would never do anything to upset you and wish to see you happy.
End of scene 2. So for scene 3, here's all you need to know. A messenger has arrived from Corinth. The news that Oedipus's father, Polybus, the king of Corinth, has died. And as soon as Jocasta hears the news, she calls Oedipus out of the palace to hear it for himself.
Dearest Jocasta, why have you called for me to come out of the house?
Listen to what this man has to say and consider how it pertains to the gods' holy prophecies.
Who is he and what does he have to say?
He has come from Corinth to relay the news that Polybus no longer walks among the living. Your father is dead, Oedipus.
What did you come here to say, stranger? Tell me yourself, in your own words.
Let me start with this. In no uncertain terms, Polybus is dead and gone.
Did he die by treachery or from natural causes?
He died peacefully in his sleep, for it doesn't take much to knock an elderly man off balance.
Then he must have succumbed to an illness?
Yes, that and old age.
Why? Why, my lady, should we ever again listen to the Pythian priestess at Delphi or study the patterns of eagles and kingfishers shrieking high above us in the sky when they all foretold that I would one day kill my father? He is now dead in the ground, and I am still here in Thebes. All these years, I never touched a weapon in his presence. The only way I might have hastened his death was through my absence. Perhaps he died of heartache from missing his son. But Polybus is no more than a shade now in Hades. With him, he has taken the prophecies that once hung over my head, all meaningless now.
Did I not predict this long ago?
Yes, but I was too afraid to listen.
Then you must banish all fear from your heart.
I still have one thing left to fear. Sleeping with my mother.
Why should a man be ruled by fear when his life is ruled by chance? Nothing can be foreseen because everything is unfolding in the present, moment to moment, where it's best for men to live. Do not worry about making love to your mother. Many men have done so in their dreams, but the man for whom such things mean nothing is better off than most.
All that you have said is well and good, but my mother still lives. And as long as she does, even if I'm wrong, I will fear her bed no matter what you say.
But don't you see your father's death as a blessing?
Yes, and I see my mother's life as a curse.
Who is this woman that fills you with fear?
Merope, the widow of Polybus. Not that it's any of your business, old man.
And what about her makes you so afraid?
A horrifying oracle sent by the gods.
Can it be spoken, or are others not allowed to know?
Apollo said that it would be my fate to lie with my mother and slaughter my father, defiling them both with these hands. And this is why for all these years I have lived so far away from Corinth. I suppose I've been lucky, though it's been hard to live without the comfort of seeing my parents.
Was this really the fear that sent you here?
Yes, the fear of murdering my father.
Well, then my words, spoken in friendship, should have released you from the very thing you feared the most.
Yes, and you will be rewarded accordingly.
I came to bring you back to Corinth for the coronation. Only then will I be rewarded.
I will never go back to the city in which my parents live.
It's clear, son, that you have no idea what you're doing.
By the gods, tell me what you mean by that, old man.
If you're afraid to return to home because of them.
I am afraid of Apollo's prophecy coming true.
Yeah, that you will stain yourself by violating your parents.
Yes, old man. This is the fear which keeps me up at night.
Well, then you have nothing to fear.
I do, if they are my parents.
Well, because you and Polybus were not related.
What? Why would you say that? Polybus was my father, wasn't he?
No more than I am.
How can you compare yourself to my father when you mean nothing to me?
Well, he and I are equals in one way. Neither of us gave you life.
Then why did he call me his son?
Well, I'll tell you why. I delivered you to him with these hands as a gift, and he treated you like a son.
With your hands? How could he have shown me such love and affection if I was not his son?
Well, he was childless. He loved you like the son he never had.
Did you find me? Or buy me before you brought me to him?
I found you on the far side of the mountain.
And what were you doing there?
I was tending my flocks as they grazed on the mountain.
So you were just a simple herdsman.
Who arrived just in time to save you.
Was I crying out in distress when you lifted me into your arms?
Your ankles can answer that question.
Why do you speak of that ancient disgrace?
Well, your ankles, they had been pierced, and I unclamped them.
A shameful disfigurement that has scarred me since birth.
For which you were named.
Was it my mother or father who gave me my name? For God's sake, tell me!
Well, I do not know, but the man who handed you over to me certainly would.
You did not discover me on your own, but obtained me from another?
Yes, a shepherd.
Do you know who he was? And can you tell me what he looked like?
I believe he served Laius.
The Laius who long ago ruled Thebes as king?
Yes, that Laius. It was his shepherd.
Is he still alive, and would it be possible for me to meet him?
Is he here? The people of Thebes would know the best.
Is there anyone here who knows of the shepherd in question? Have you seen him in the city or out in the fields? If you know, then speak, for now is the time and not later.
I believe he speaks of the man in the fields for whom you have already sent. But as to Costa, she will be able to say for sure.
Dear lady, Is this in fact the same man, the one you sent for and the one of whom he speaks?
Stop now. There is no point in listening to this man or worrying about what he might have said.
I will never stop hunting for the truth of my birth now that I am on the trail.
By the gods, I implore you to stop. If you have any regard for yourself or your life, can't you see I am standing here sick with worry? That should be enough to stop you.
Why should you be worried? Even if I am shown to be the son of a slave, going back 3 generations, it will never taint your birth.
Even so,
or the
I'm
color
asking
of your
you to
blood.
do as I say. Please be done with this.
There is nothing you could say that would stop me from uncovering the truth.
This is because you are not listening to what I'm trying to say. I'm only thinking of you.
I have been listening to you for far too long. Your words are starting to grate on my nerves.
Ill-fated boy, may you never discover who you really are.
You, go find that shepherd and bring him here now. And leave her to worry about the fate of her family's name.
Wretched. You are wretched. This is your name, and all I will ever say to you again.
And to scene 3. For scene 4, our final scene, here's all you need to know. Oedipus calls for the shepherd, whom the messenger alleges left Oedipus as a baby on the side of Mount Kithaeron to appear on the palace steps, where he will now interrogate him in front of the people of Thebes.
Before getting started, I wish to ask you first, Corinthian stranger, is this the man you described?
Yes, this is the man.
Look me in the eye, old man, and answer all of my questions. Were you one of Laius' men?
That's right. I was a slave, though not obtained on the market. I was born and raised inside that palace.
What was your trade?
For most of my life, I have tended flock.
Where do you most often take your flocks to graze?
Mount Kithaeron and the valleys around it.
Have you met this man before? Do you know him from there?
Which man? And how would I have met him?
This man, right here. Have you ever been in contact with him, or has he ever crossed your path?
Not that I can recall. But when you get to be my age, it's hard to remember the face of every man you met.
Well, it's not surprising, given his years, that he can't place me, but I will now jog his memory with a clear reminder of our shared history, how for 3 seasons, spring, summer, and fall, for 3 years, we watched our flocks as they grazed upon Mount Kithaeron. He had 2 and I 1. Then when winter finally arrived, I would herd mine back into their little sheds, and he would take his back to the stables of Laius. Does any of this ring a bell? Is what I'm saying true?
Yes, it's true, though it all took place so long ago.
Now tell me, do you remember once giving me a newborn child so I could raise him myself as if he were my own?
What? Why on earth would you ask me that question?
Because, my friend, this man whom you are now looking at was once that child.
Shut your mouth before I shut it for you.
Easy there, old man. Do not threaten him. You are the one who should be threatened.
For doing what, my noble master?
For withholding information about the child in question.
What child? He has no idea what he is saying. He's stirring up trouble and wasting your time.
If you will not speak willfully, then we have ways of making you speak against your will.
Oh, in the name of the gods, please do not torture me, sir. I am just an old man.
You, bend back his arms until they snap.
Oh, God, no. Why? What do you want to know?
The child, did you give it to this man?
I did. Ah! I wish I had died that day.
You will die right now if you don't tell us everything.
Better to die than to speak.
The man is stalling. Show him we're serious.
No, no, no. I already told you. I gave him the child.
Where did you get it? Was it yours? Or was it given to you by another?
It wasn't mine. It was given to me by someone else.
Did it come from someone among us? In whose house was it born?
Please, my lord, I'm begging you, stop asking me these questions.
Don't make me ask you again or you will be dead.
It came from this house.
From a slave? Or from someone in the royal family?
Ah! The moment has finally arrived when I must say the words, no matter how dreadful.
When I must hear what you must say.
It was Laius's child, or so people said. Your wife could tell you more.
Did she give it to you?
Yes, Lord.
Why?
So I could dispose of it.
Was she its mother?
But she was scared of evil prophecies.
Which said?
The child would grow up to murder its parents.
What made you give it to this man?
I could not help feeling sorry for the child. And I believed that this man would take it to a distant land, far, far away from here. But if you are who he says you are, know that you were born to suffer more than any man before or after.
All has been revealed. It is as clear as the sunlight now shining in my eyes for the last time. I am stained by birth, by marriage, and by the blood of the man I murdered.
Most honorable men of Thebes, what horrifying things you will soon hear and see. What loud sounds of mourning will come bellowing up from your throats if you have any reverence left for the house of Laius. For all of the waters of Istra and Phasis could not wash away the atrocities within the palace walls, which will soon be revealed in the light of day, horrors both intended and unintentional. The wounds that cut the deepest, causing the greatest pain, are always self-inflicted.
The things we already know are nothing short of monstrous. What more can you say that will add to our grief?
First this, Jocasta, our noble queen, is dead.
Unlucky woman. What was the cause?
She died by her own hand. Since you were not there to see it, you have already been sheltered from the worst of what happened. But you will now hear how the poor lady suffered, as many grim details as I can remember. She came barreling through the palace in a wild fury, ran into her room, slamming the doors, hurling herself upon her marriage bed, invoking the name of Laius, dead for decades, as she remembered how she bore him a boy who slaughtered his father, made love to his mother, and spawned such hideous children that men averted their eyes. She wept and wept over the bridal bed, on which she had once given life to double offspring, husband from husband, son from son. We did not see her die or how her agony came to an end as Oedipus burst through the door, shouting for someone to bring him a sword. All we could do was watch as he packed the floor, asking where he might find his wife, the woman who delivered him as his children. And it must have been a god who showed him in his frenzy where to find her, since none of us dared to move. As if guided by an unseen hand, he charged straight through the bedroom, threw open the doors, ripping off the hinges, and when he saw what was waiting for him inside, he let out a sound so chilling it sent shivers down my spine. It was then that we all saw her, dangling from a rope, a noose tied tightly around her throat. When he saw her, he howled with despair while loosening the knot from which she hung. Then, after her poor corpse fell to the floor, we saw the most disturbing sight of all. He pried her down with her pins that held her up in her gown and raised them high in the air, looking skyward before plunging them deep into his eyes, crying,
"Never again will you see the horrors I must suffer, or the evil I have done. I condemn you to darkness, for you saw things you should not have seen, and failed to see what was right in front of you all of this time."
And repeating these words, he stabbed at his eyes again and again and again with golden pins. The black blood gushed down the sides of his face with thick, vicious rivers of gore, which erupted from his hollow sockets and sprayed out in all directions like a rainstorm. These horrors did not just rip through the life of a single individual, they obliterated both man and woman in the same instant. It's true. They were once happy, but all they know this day is loss, grief, shame, death, and destruction, and any other affliction that can be imagined.
And does wretched Oedipus find any relief from his pain?
He is shouting inside, uttering unholy words.
Open the doors so the people of Thebes can finally see the man who murdered my father and inseminated my mother.
He does not wish to remain in the palace. He's hounded by his own curse, but plans to expel himself from Thebes forever. That is, if he can somehow find the strength to prop up his body and stumble out of the city, for he is overwhelmed by his self-affliction, too weak to walk, and must be led around by a guide. But he will soon show you himself, as the doors are now opening to expose a sight so heartbreaking and pathetic that even those who hate him will be moved to tears.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Where am I going? Where am I being led by this endless misery? Does anyone hear my voice? Or is it lost in the wind? Oh, how far I have fallen.
To a dreadful place, far beyond the reach of our ears and our eyes.
I am shrouded in darkness. Black thunderclouds swirling above my head, descending in a vortex to suck out the light, plunging me into eternal night. Oh God, it stings, the place where the pins went in, reminding me of why I gouged out my eyes.
What torture it must be to feel such grief and sorrow with every wave of pain.
My friend, you are still here. You alone have stayed behind to stand beside a blind man. Though I cannot see your face, I recognize you by the sound of your voice.
You have done something terrible. Where did you find the strength to cut yourself off from the light, ripping out your own eyes? What vicious god took hold of you and forced you to do it?
Apollo, my friend. Apollo is the source of my suffering, but I acted alone when I sliced open my eyes, for why should they be within my face when all I could see was sadness and grief all around me and nothing to bring me pleasure or joy?
It was just as you said.
What would I have seen? Or who would I have spoken to? What is left to love in this world? Take me away from this land, as far away as you can. I am lost, cursed. No man is more hated by the gods than Oedipus?
People of Thebes, witness the disaster that has leveled King Oedipus, who answered the riddle and rose to great power, whose fortune was the envy of us all. Call no man happy until he crosses over the threshold of death, free of pain at last.
That's the end of our dramatic presentation this evening. Thank you so much for your attention. We're so grateful you could join us. We're going to shift gears now with huge gratitude to our actors. The one thing that Zoom does not allow us to do is applaud, but I know there are 6,000 plus people all applauding in their homes right now to our wonderful performers. I want to thank them for their gifts, for their talents, for giving such an amazing performance tonight with so little rehearsal over the last 2 weeks. And we're just hats off to all of them for making this possible against all odds. I also want to thank Marjolaine Goldsmith and Sophia Pedlow, who've been running the technical operation here, making sure that everything went smoothly. I can't believe it, we made it through. And it hung together. I'm so delighted. We're now gonna shift gears and we're gonna turn things over in just a second to our panelists. Our 4 panelists who are going to be joining us in a few seconds are members of the New York City community who have spent a great deal of the last 2 months since the outbreak of COVID in our country on the front lines, advocating for people who don't necessarily have a voice, on the front lines, quite literally saving people and bringing them to safety, on the front lines, defending people from racist attacks, and on the front lines, speaking out for what is right. And as our panelists begin to assemble, I guess what I'll quickly do is just mention who they are, and then in a few seconds, I'm gonna turn things over to them for their brief gut responses to what they heard and saw in the play that spoke to them across time and resonated with their experiences. But before I do anything else, I want to plant the first seed of the first question we're going to ask you as an audience as soon as the panelists are done with their brief remarks. I'd love for you to think about this, and then when we come out to you in a few minutes, we're going to ask the question again, and then we'll take answers from all over the country and the world. Here's the question we'd love for you to think about. Sophocles' Oedipus the King was written and performed in 429 BC. A year after, just after, if the dating is correct, terrible pestilence or plague ravaged the city of Athens, killing over a 3-year period multiple waves. This is just the inner period between the first wave and the next waves when the play is being performed, killed 1/3 of the Athenian population. So there's no one in that audience that would have been a stranger to the screams or to the sounds of suffering in the play, or to the themes of blindness in sight and prophecy and the challenge of leadership in the time of pestilence and plague. And so the question we want you to think about, and we'll come back to you in a few minutes, is this. What do you think this guy Sophocles was up to when he staged this play for his community? What was he trying to say? What was his objective by bringing the people of Athens together to hear this story told this way? What was he up to? We're going to return to that question in a few seconds. Before we do, I think I'm going to start by turning things over to our panel. Our 4 panelists I know will ultimately all arrive, but we have 2 of them here, and it appears that Joanne, you're unmuted. So why don't we just go straight to you, and you can introduce yourself and then launch directly into your gut responses to the play. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's a pleasure joining this panel, and it was an amazing opportunity to watch theater this way. And I also want to give a shout out to my public advocate, because I didn't realize that Jamani had this amazing talent. And so it was really powerful to watch. And so, you know, this was a pleasure, true pleasure. what struck me, I was pretty nervous before I joined this, and I was thinking like, man, maybe I need to read some Cliff Notes or something and refresh myself of this play. But what struck me was obviously the relevance, right, of what we're going through right now. There is a horrific pandemic, a global pandemic that is taking place, and in all the very ugly ways that it is showing the American class and caste system that exists. If you look at who's suffering, it's the Black and brown communities, it's the immigrants, it's the workers who are on the front lines. And so, in the opening scene when, Oedipus talks about foreigners, that's always a trigger for me. As a leader of the Asian American Federation and the Asian American nonprofit organization, anytime I hear foreigner, it always means the word other, that you don't belong here. And that is exactly what is happening to my community right now. There have been some pretty harsh words spoken. There's been some victim blaming by lots of different leaders from our country. And so the minute I hear anybody, the word that denotes othering of my community, obviously, it's painful, it's frustrating, it's, I'm angered. The Asian American communities right now, obviously communities suffering a lot from anti-racist rhetoric. We have hate crimes, we have bias incidents. My deputy just texted me and said, she was listening to this webinar where they've had, the national reporting system for all the hate crimes and bias incidents. They've had 1,500 incidents. A good chunk of that is in New York. So I know that despite people realizing that Asian Americans are Americans and we are your neighbors and we are people who've always lived here, it's, this thing, calling like what is happening, the coronavirus and, othering and highlighting a community that is also suffering along with everybody else is painful. And so listening to this was painful in many ways, but I think there is, what left me was the ending. Where the king was remorseful, and he worked so hard to uncover the truth about what was his heritage and his birth and all that he had done. And I hope to God that our leaders reach that remorseful stage where they feel like they need to take some responsibility for the lack of preparation, the victim blaming, the stoking racism, and I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Joanne. I really appreciate it for being the first to go. Usually I look to see who's making the best eye contact to see who goes, but you're all making amazing eye contact right now. Maybe Dr. Gore, since I see you in my view right in front of me, if you could jump in next.
I thought the acting was incredible. Shout out to Jimani. I don't think I've seen him act in this way since middle school. We went to junior high school together way back when. I'm an emergency physician here in Brooklyn, New York, both at Kings County Hospital and SUNY Downstate Hospital. And Downstate itself was the first designated COVID-19 hospital. For starters, I don't think I've read any Sophocles probably in well over 20 years, but there's certain themes that are evident, whether it's Oedipus Rex or even Antigone, and it's just hubrisness or excessive pride in leadership. And it makes me think about what our national leaders are actually saying, people who have been elected to office, and how even though you can have so many people who have so much insight and so much reason, and actually have good advice, but how you can really just avoid eye contact, avoid taking responsibility, and avoid seeing what's actually in front of you just to feed your own agenda. I think that's something that we definitely see within some of our nationally elected officials. Some things that really stood out, I think it was the chorus, and they were speaking about They said, when will it end? When, halting its progression. They said people are dying and dropping here and there, and there's no one is left to mourn them. This is stuff that we wound up seeing in our hospitals, in our emergency departments during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. There are patients who are coming in and literally being dropped off by their relatives, not because those relatives didn't want to stay with them, but because they weren't allowed to be in the hospitals out of fear that they may wind up acquiring the illness and then spreading it to other people. And so we watched people die by themselves in the hallways with no relatives around them. And if they were around them, we were communicating with their relatives by way of a smartphone or a tablet. And it just makes my heart goes out to a lot of people who've lost their loved ones during the pandemic. But this is something that Sophocles has clearly stated. This has been something going on for many, many years. It was going on in ancient Greece. It's going on in the world today. So I'm hoping that we kind of take heed to what we're reading and what we're listening to in literature, as in life. The need to take heed to warnings. The need to ensure that we don't make the same mistakes as our forefathers or our foremothers have done in the past.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gore. I really appreciate everything you do and everything you've contributed so far. Paulette, would you like to chime in?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, and congrats to all the performers. It was awesome. A huge shout out to Jimani. And thank you to Jimani for inviting me. So my name is Paulette, and I'm a community organizer. I work in an organization called Vocal New York, and it's been around for the last 20 years with the mission of ending AIDS, ending mass incarceration, the war on drugs, and homelessness. I've been very involved for years in all of our housing work around New York City, but in particular around homelessness. A piece of the performance that struck me was the part where Tiresias was talking about the power of truth, and he said, "The power of truth resides in me. The truth is strong enough to protect me." And it made me think to one of the things that we always battle with as organizers is that we get into this fights with elected officials and with policymakers about policy and the specifics of details and things that in the end we are right. Like the truth that we have around the things that are right and wrong, the truth around the fact that homelessness is a total tragedy and is our elected officials could do something about that. We don't need to be in a policy fight around those kinds of things. The truth is enough to have that argument and to stand on. And so in the case of what I'm doing right now in New York City, and along with a lot of others, is we're in this huge battle with the mayor around trying to put homeless people into hotel rooms where we have over 100,000 hotel rooms that are empty right now across the city. We have FEMA dollars that would pay for it. And for weeks, for the last 6 weeks, the mayor has been in an argument with us about all of these details. And so it goes back to the truth. The truth is that homelessness is wrong. The truth is that the mayor his policies are actually killing people, and his inaction is killing people. And there's nothing else that ground is strong enough to stand on. Just like Tiresias said, that's all you need.
Thank you so much, Paulette. I really appreciate that, and you bringing your perspective to this. Anthony, I know you just completed a 16-hour shift as EMS, and so we're grateful for whatever brain cells you have left to offer to this conversation, and I'm sorry to make you wait till last, but we look forward to what you have to say.
No, it was an honor, and thank you for having me. I'm a lieutenant paramedic for the FDNY EMS. I'm also the vice president of the EMS Officers Union, which keeps me in tune to what's going on, not only where I work, but throughout citywide, what the paramedics and EMTs have been facing. And I brought many patients to Dr. Gore. I don't know if you recognize.
Oh man, I was trying to figure out, I was like, I know you.
Yeah. I worked out at Kings County for many years. The play, where do you start? There's so many parallels, to not only the federal government and our own Mad King, but all the players on all the way down. Some of the lines that jumped out to me though, as a 911 provider, is when Oedipus was talking about the moans and wailing. It just made me think of the patients in their final cries of the ambulance sirens, the wailing of the ambulance sirens as they're going through the streets. This is what people hear in the pandemic. You know, the average person just hears the sirens and they know what that's going to. It's almost, it's taken over as the din of the city. There's a couple other things, you know, whereas the doctors getting them in the hospital, I'm going into their homes. And the EMTs and medics are going into their homes and they're seeing, like you can see behind me, the pictures and the paintings and all the characters that make up their lives. And you see a life full. And then you see them as their life is leaving them. And it's this thing that it's a blessing to bear witness sometimes, to be there. If nothing else, if I can't save them, at least I'm there to bear witness. But now I appear as an apparition. You know, I'm covered in a mask and all they see is the eyes. I got everything else is covered. And it's this white on white on white. And it almost looks like a ghost. And I'm there to bear witness as a ghost. And it takes away the humanity of it. I have to keep a distance from these people. And that weighs heavily on the people in EMS, because when we can't save you, we're there to comfort the living and the family. But because everybody is a potential patient, I have to keep them at a distance. And the humanity of touch, of even in the play, at the end, there was one person who was still, Oedipus, why did you do this? I don't want to think of Oedipus as a sympathetic character, but he is, unlike our leaders nowadays. Some of them don't entice that sympathy, but all the patients who are suffering with what we're seeing in the streets today do. They bring out all the empathy and sympathy amongst the people who are providing care, not only for Paulette and the homeless and the racist stuff that Joanne was saying, and the doctor and I seeing it on this level. It's pretty amazing how the parallels of a play of 2,500 years ago resonate today. And I'll just end it with the ending of the play offers hope. And if there's one thing that keeps EMS people going, and the doctor and everybody else, is you have to have a little reservoir of hope. And a pandemic can drain that reservoir. It can make it so that, you know, I'm not going to get the next one. And unfortunately in EMS, we've lost 3 members to COVID, and I had 4 members to COVID, and I had a young man commit suicide recently. He was 23 years old, and he worked out of the Bronx, and he was new, and he came out of the academy in a pandemic, and he couldn't handle what he was seeing. And that could rob all of us of our hope. And if there's one emotion that makes humanity human, to be humane to each other, is hope. And the play ends with a little hope. That's how I interpreted it. And that's my message to everyone here. And I'm thankful again for you guys having me, and to be a part of it was really a special honor. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Anthony. I want to thank all 4 panelists for your candor, your courage, for getting us started, for taking the risk of not knowing what you were going to say, and modeling for the audience what we hope they'll do in turn. You all will have live mics, and we're going to keep them on. And anytime you want to jump back into the conversation, we hope you will. Listening to Anthony, I'm reminded of something that people often ask us, because we perform Greek tragedy sometimes before COVID 6 nights a week. And they say, where's the hope in tragedy? And there isn't a lot of hope on stage. I appreciate Anthony bringing in the hope at the end of the play, but it strikes me that the hope is actually in the 4,696 people who are staying for this conversation right now, who are bearing witness to what was just said by our panelists. That's the hope. The hope is in the community that bears witness to the truth, no matter how hard it is to hear. So with that, I want to shift gears to the community that's here. And this is the part that's really uncharted for us. So I hope you'll bear with us. Those of you who are out in the audience, there's a raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. At least I hope there is. We're going to ask you, I'm going to ask the question one more time. We ask you to raise your hand if you want to say something. I see people already are. Here's the question again. Now that you've heard these amazing actors and these incredible panelists respond from their guts to what they heard and saw in this 2,500-year-old play, what do you think Sophocles was up to when he wrote this play and staged it for his community in 429 BC during and between a massive plague, a pestilence that ravaged the very city that was watching the play, much like we are today? And my colleagues who are controlling the promotion of people into the pool, I'm going to ask you to promote somebody into the pool for us. And I see someone coming on, and we're going to unmute you. And Kane Mo, we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you could activate your video if you want to, or you could also just stay as audio. Oh.
I was really struck by, in the beginning, of how much Oedipus wanted to blame somebody and how he's really trying to blame somebody, and then how much he had to take personal responsibility. And it strikes me that the illumination of us as a society is how much responsibility we haven't taken for our interconnection.
Thank you so much, Kamo. I really appreciate that thought. I was listening to you speak and thinking about all the ways I willfully, before COVID, blinded myself to the suffering around me all the time, to get to work, to get home to my child, to get through my own day. This notion that we kind of practice a willful blindness where we don't take responsibility for how we're complicit in systems that create the kind of suffering that we're seeing on display right now, not the disease, but the systems that are now being exposed that we're complicit in. And so I really appreciate, and this question of when will we take responsibility and how for our individual roles in causing that suffering, again, not simply the disease, but the inequities that we're seeing before us right now. Jen, I see you're in the room here. Let's unmute Jen. Someone will unmute Jen. There you are. We're not able to hear you. Hold on. There we go.
Hi. Zoom actually kicked me out, so I missed the question.
Oh, it's okay. The question was simply, why do you think Sophocles wrote this play and staged it during a time of plague for his people? What was he trying to say? What was he up to?
I mean,
go right ahead.
I think it was just something that kind of like what Jonathan Larson did with Rent, in that it was, you know, an escape for him, but also to provide hope for an audience.
Thank you so much. This idea that maybe by way of the ancient Greeks, the classical Greeks, watching this play about their mythic past, thousands of years prior, they could come into they could all both escape the present and also come into some direct connection with it that they didn't normally have at the same time. Mm-hmm. And that's what some of the greatest theater does, like Jonathan Larson's Rent, and I can name many others. So I really appreciate you jumping in. We have another person right here. Let's unmute our next participant. And by the way, I'm just so amazed by the fact that this actually is working. So I'm delighted that you all are sticking with us. Pena, please.
Yeah, I feel like what the play was about, and mostly was because what he wanted to portray in this was that because everything was wrong at the time, so I feel like he wanted to share how the suffering was going on, and like that we were kind of blinded, that people were blinded and were not seeing it, especially Oedipus, that he was not wanting to see until he saw that many people were died. So I feel like also in the end how he gives hope that maybe after everything can be solved, if we as a community unite and believe that there can be change.
Thank you so much for that message. I really appreciate that, Sarah. Thank you for jumping in. Panelists, feel free to jump in. Yeah, Joanne, please.
Sure. So I really appreciate what Anthony had to say. I really had to hold back from crying because, you know, there are 4,000 people watching. So it's good not to sob like an idiot. But
it's okay, cry. It's okay.
Absolutely. And so for all that we're, thinking about this, it's hubris, right? Like this is a huge evil. But one thing that, I'm thinking, even what you said, Brian, I think it really resonated with me, is about when we get out of quarantine, how do we move forward, right? We know what the problems were. We saw the injustices. We see we see who's dying. I mean, it really has, this pandemic has really shown, really laid bare society and how we see each other. How do we, we're all at home, but really we're really seeing humanity and how vulnerable we are for the first time. And so, I really think about, the thing that I'm obsessed with these days is thinking about what's going to happen after we get out of here, right? Like, Paulette said about, some of the challenges of the city budget. Like, we are living in a state that's pretty much broke. The city's broke. But together, what will we prioritize as the essential services? We need to, every day at 7 o'clock, we're all standing outside clapping for Dr. Gore and Anthony, and really appreciating the work that we do. But we also need to appreciate the grocery store workers, the undocumented immigrants who go to work every single day, the everyday people who make the city run, the MTA workers who are cleaning the subways, and the homeless people who really have nowhere to go. So this is why they've taken up residence. So I think about, I hope that we as a society, as people, we're up to the challenge of really being thoughtful, that we have had this really powerful and really tragic collective experience, and that we will all invest in figuring out what our true priorities are, right? I mean, I think about, is it the Wall Street bankers that, who had the luxury of staying home? I had the privilege of staying home and working from home. There were a lot of people who did not have the privilege. And, our organizations work around preventing people from being attacked and having people reporting what is happening to them, to the police, to different city agencies, even with our own website. It's to protect people who had to go to work. And so, what you said about, all that we've said and all that we've ignored in our everyday lives, right? And, what we're gonna do, and I hope to God this is not true, but once we get out and once, we're finally let out of our homes, and I hope that we are not going to rush back out to embrace this thing called normal, right? Because normal sucked. Normal was not okay, because normal was injustice. Normal was inequality. And I hope that this is an opportunity for all of us to say, wow, just to acknowledge what had happened, and to work towards something that centers on the true essential workers. I mean, I am the first one to admit, it didn't take a pandemic to make me realize I'm not an essential worker, because I got to work at home. And, granted, it's the nonprofit work, and we stood up for our vulnerable community members, not just Asians, but every vulnerable New Yorker. But I hope that we are really thoughtful about not just jumping into doing everything that was comfortable. It's going to be comfortable because that's what we knew, and because we wanted to go back to how life was before. Because honestly, life cannot go back to the way it was before, because before was not great, And so I think, they always, the other side of comedy, tragedy is comedy, but maybe the other side of tragedy is hope. And maybe this is what was the reminder for all of us today.
It's amazing you say that. I think we all learned in school that Greek tragedy, if we even came into contact with it, was this expression of nihilism where we barely apprehend the forces that work upon us until it's too late. And by then we've killed our families and generations to come, and we have to live with those consequences. And that describes the human experience. We can't apprehend the forces that work upon us, like fate and gods and government and chance and the weather, until it's too late. But there's a difference between what happens on stage and what it provokes, even in a virtual audience like tonight. That there's this charge that runs through us of maybe a new a new awareness, a new desire to connect, a new desire to make change before it's too late. And that's the impact of tragedy on an audience. It's also the impact of experiencing what we call tragedy, like the pandemic, like Superstorm Sandy, like 9/11, where all of a sudden there's this impulse to actually hear each other and see each other. And what is the half-life of that impulse? How long does it last? How long can we hold on to it? How long can we hold on to it tonight after we turn off our computers? And what new things are possible when we open ourselves to listening to each other's truth? And with that, I want to turn things over to Fernando. Is Fernando?
Yeah, it's Fernanda. Yeah. Well, first
Fernanda,
thank you
for
to
waiting.
all the panelists. Yeah, for the work that you've done. It's amazing to hear all of that you have done. It's honestly so inspiring. I am currently a university student. That's not that I can do a lot, but it's still like I appreciate everything that you've done. And now turning to the question, to me, the idea of blindness was what really like stuck to me. It's like the most obvious thing that you could perhaps pick up, but like considering what it might have meant then when the play was portrayed, especially since they had no idea what could be causing plagues like this. Right now we are blessed with the knowledge of our technology and be able to see what exactly is like causing these kinds of issues. But back then, if we imagine how blind everybody was to what exactly was the cause of all of the issues that they were suffering, it must have been so terrifying, that lack of control and to be able to see. And I think that theme that really like shows us how we as a society are really afraid of what we cannot see and how blind we are to like the problems that we were suffering. I think back then it had like also that kind of added meaning of how we are so afraid of not only the things we can't see, but of what we cannot control. Right now, I think a lot of us even today are feeling this lack of control because we don't really know what's going to happen in the future. There's so much uncertainty surrounding everything, especially for even more vulnerable people that might be suffering a lot more because of economic situations, or people like me, people of color that are more vulnerable to all kinds of situations in society. I think that idea of not being able to see what's happening around you and not like that lack of control, really, I think that's something that we have to fight against if we're really going to get out of this eventually.
Thank you so much, Fernanda. I really appreciate that. Anthony, did you want to respond to that?
If I could.
Please, yeah. Fernanda, stay on for a second. And Anthony, yeah.
So what I liked is that she pointed out the blindness, right? Having treated blind people so many times over my years in 911, when you're blind, the other senses become heightened. So in the play, he blinds himself, and then the sense of morality is heightened because he can no longer see what he wants to see. He has to be able to absorb it all. And what I've noticed and what she was saying, in the back of the ambulance, it becomes a confessional. I'm a de facto priest, if you, in some ways, you know. The stethoscope is my white collar. And the story and the narrative, and what I'm trying to tie it into, is the story and the narrative that people want to tell themselves so they don't have to see what's going on in the world, right? And they sit there and they create their own storyline, and they live their lives that way. And they could take their glasses off and become blind to whatever they want to, when they want to do it. But when people are vulnerable, like Oedipus, when he started to learn the truth, or when I get them in someone's house and in front of their families, they're still living that narrative. And they want to still tell their story the way they think it's told. And by the time we get them into the ambulance, the truth comes out. I didn't want to tell you in front of my parents that I'm gay. I didn't want to tell you in front of my brother that I have cancer. That truth is something that we all try and deny, that there's an end to all of this. And if we acknowledge that there's an end, that all of us will pass away, then every moment is meaningful. And that's what I've taken from the patients I've treated. The ones with the terminal illnesses, everything is meaningful. Every bit of life has a meaning to it. It's almost like they were set free. Oedipus was set free by going blind. What she's saying, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, was why it resonated is because we want to blind ourselves to everything but the truth. And if we can absorb the truth and blind ourselves to our own narrative, then I think we can progress as a society and truly realize that the only two things that connect us is hope and love, right? Compassion and love. Those are the only two real things. Those are the only two things that make us grow. He didn't have it, and Oedipus didn't have it. He couldn't grow until the very end, when he showed compassion for himself by blinding himself. I think if we can start to pull those things out of ourselves, then as society we can grow, and people will start to see each other as humans, not as colors or as races or as economic factors or anything like that. I don't want anything from my fellow humans but love and compassion. And then if they buy me a drink, that's icing on the cake.
You're going to get bought a lot of drinks after this, I assure you, Anthony. Sometimes people speak in our discussions and they open their mouths and they exceed the beauty of the performance. And you did just that just then. And it's always beautiful to see. And Fernanda, thank you so much for bringing what you brought.
Fernanda, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, honestly.
And Dr. Gore, I heard you respond. I want to bring you in, but I also want to acknowledge that Anthony wasn't encouraging people to blind themselves. He was extending his metaphor. And the metaphor is to make the choice to awaken all the senses to the point where you hear and take in everything with the clarity of someone who's willing to face the truth. And that's where Oedipus was at the end of the play. It doesn't require a physical act of blinding. Sometimes it requires an exchange like this. And Dr. Gore, you had something to say.
No, I 100% agree. One thing though, in the spirit of blindness, I think people look to have these saviors as the end all be all in terms of who's going to be their leader, who's going to tell them exactly what, because it kind of frees you up from taking any responsibility for your actions, because all that stuff can be pointed to the actual leader itself. But in terms of moving forward, and I think one of the main points that Sophocles tried to articulate is the need for collective leadership, the need for not just one person to kind of open their eyes up, but there were multiple people throughout the play, throughout the tragedy, that tried to warn and take responsibility for their mistakes. But also, I kind of look at this stuff as, we need to actively engage to make sure that our society thrives. It's not just going to be one particular thing. It's not just going to be, people, pay a lot of homage to essential workers, and we thank them, for acknowledging us. But there's so many different elements that are responsible for making a city thrive. And places where people don't do well with COVID-19, places that have historically not done well with any sort of disease process, whether it's violence, whether it's infection, whether it's heart disease, those tend to be areas that have poor economic development. Those patients in those communities, the Central Brooklyn community, in which me and the lieutenant have worked in for a long period of time, don't have the same social support systems. They don't have the same access to care. We're happy that the county is there. We're happy that Downstate is there. We're happy that Brookdale Medical Center is there, and Interfaith and all the other institutions that are within Central Brooklyn, but they can't save everybody. And so you start looking at what the responsibilities are, not just as for frontline workers, but as concerned citizens, and how we can play our own part. If education isn't made paramount, then you have people receiving inadequate information and they're left to suffer. If you don't have proper food, then you're left to suffer. If you don't have adequate care or just basic human contact, what's called social support, people don't thrive and they're not at their best. And so I'm hoping that this highlights, and I think Joanne mentioned something, how do we move forward? And I think in terms of us moving forward, we really all have to take a collective responsibility, but also determine what ways that we can be responsible and we can be helpful throughout this entire plight. It has to be a tailored approach. It's not going to be something that you're going to copy off of someone else. Not everybody needs to be a physician. Not everybody needs to be a paramedic. Not everyone needs to be a food deliverer, but you can actually offer acts of kindness. You can offer support in your own areas of expertise to make sure that the community continues to thrive.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gore. I believe you've been waiting for some time down there. Thank you so much for your patience. We're going to come to you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm also a college student, currently studying from home right now, and I actually study classics in school. So Oedipus Rex, I knew the big twist ending was coming up. But ever since I read it in high school, I found it fascinating to see it in this light, like now that we're in the middle of a pandemic or a plague, if you will. And looking at the context, what I thought about actually was one of Aesop's fables. Aesop was a writer who was active about a century before Sophocles. And I pulled up one of his fables here. It currently reads, "Every man, according to ancient legend, is born into the world with 2 bags suspended from his neck. All bags in front full of his neighbor's faults, and a large bag behind full of his own faults. Hence it is that men are quick to see the faults of others, and yet are often blind to their own failings." So going back to Fernanda's point about blindness, I found that really striking because as a psychology major alongside my classics major, I think it just shows people's self-serving biases even during Sophocles' time. And during eras of panic, there's a phrase we use in the field called contagion, where someone panics and everyone panics, and they can't really comprehend what's going on because germ theory wasn't invented yet. So when people can't comprehend things, they blame it on the gods, or they want something physical to blame because they can't see it. And it's quite fascinating that I'm reading this now as a college student, studying both classics and psychology, and seeing how that view has changed since high school.
Sounds like you might have an internship with Theater of War Productions in your future. Thank you so much, Lee. I just want to acknowledge that I was going to ask a question about blindness and sight, but the people who've already come together have like a prophet and intuited everything I was going to say. Tiresias says to Oedipus, "Since you have made light of my blindness, I say you are the one who is blind. You cannot see the evil that surrounds you, the iniquity within your home, or the identity of the person with whom you live." And Oedipus says back to Tiresias, "You know nothing of the truth, since you are blind in your ears, blind in your eyes, blind in your mind." This theme of blindness, and what does it mean to be blind? And what does it mean to have sight? And who is actually seeing the truth has been central to the things that have been said so far, but I just want to foreground it by saying, it's definitely a theme that I wanted to bring up in the play. We have a new person here at the bottom of my screen. I'm not even going to try to pronounce your name because I don't want to butcher it, but please jump right in, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Oh, me?
Yes, you.
And one, hi, Rob. I used to work for his wife in Bati restaurant, so this was very heartwarming to see him. I texted her too. I was like, "Oh, Rob, he's so amazing." And also thank you to everyone who did the play. What really resonated with me is that I was thinking about how in the moment of a plague or a pestilence or a moment of fear that you have an immediate flight or fight reaction, and you're unable to access your higher order thinking and think about these meta questions about what's happening to the broader community. So the mechanism and the medium of a play allows you to externalize that story and is inherently social and allows you to make meaning out of what's happening with the people in your community, especially as it's immediately impacting you, like the 1/3 number that you gave about Athens. And then the other part that really resonated with me, and I was thinking about Sophocles, was about how they immediately tried to delegitimize Tiresias as a prophet, and who are the prophets in this moment, and how do we avoid from directly engaging with them, and then just question whether they are even worthy of having speech, and just the way in which we might not be immediately haunted by having sex with our mother, but we are so disconnected from our elders in search of the type of freedom that Thebes offers. And then just finally, going back to the prophets, how those can be the scientists, but also the prison abolitionists, and that, you could be in Park Slope in Brooklyn that's relatively more affluent, but you're still haunted by the people who are being incarcerated on a daily basis, and just the parallels between that and thinking of the almost 9 times rate of community transmission of COVID-19 on somewhere like Rikers Island versus the rest of New York City. So to me, the final thing, and I want to really thank you for today, is I remember after Hurricane Katrina, there was a theater company that performed Waiting for Godot in New Orleans. And just back to Rob's point, that I think that, there's all types of things that are essential to society. And part of it is having this public imaginary where we can come together and make sense of what makes no sense at all. So thank you.
Thank you. You are all hired. Thank you so much for what you just said. And I want to take what you said, and I know we have a couple more people adding to the circle here, but shift to that theme of prophecy that you brought into the room, because I want to just touch upon that for a second. And again, the tricky part of the rules of engagement with theater of war productions is that you can always answer the first question when the idea comes to you. You can answer the question that I've asked. You can assimilate all of your answers into one perfect statement, like many of the people have done tonight in such impressive ways. But I want to riff on prophecy and just say that prophecy plays a huge role in the play. Prophecy heeded, prophecy ignored. And, years ago, before the play begins, Laius ignores a prophecy that he's gonna, if he marries Jocasta, that his son will kill him. And he moves past and ignores that prophecy, or thinks he can outwit that prophecy. And of course, Oedipus also receives a prophecy at Delphi that he'll murder his father and sleep with his mother. And then less than 24 hours later, on the way to Thebes, he kills an elderly man on the road and marries an older woman only a few days later. And so this, this question of prophecy, and Thebes has received a prophecy too. The prophecy is if Thebes doesn't find the murderer of Laius and expel that person from the city, the plague will never end. And so there are all these prophecies, and some of them seem like they really require, people to heed them. And then some of them, it's unclear. How do we receive this information and process it and act upon it? How do we know which prophecies to heed and which prophecies to ignore? Toward the end of scene 3, Jocasta tells Oedipus explicitly, pay no mind to prophecies. If the god wants to say something to us, he'll make it known to us directly. So I just wanted to just expand on that theme of prophecy. And I see Anthony has his hand up in the middle, and we have some other people coming into the room. Anthony, since you're our EMS prophet, I want to hear what you have to say, and we'll come down to the other people who've joined the circle.
So I'm going to put the union hat on. As the vice president of the union and being involved so many years, trying to tell this city the importance of EMS, that the big one is coming. And we've been lucky with H1N1, SARS, and Ebola. We had patients, but we didn't get punched directly in the face. For years, we told this department and this city that you have to invest in EMS. 68% of the workforce has left in the last 4 years. 75% has less than 5 years experience. That's unacceptable. The unions have said you cannot pay us $35,000 less than the other agencies. And not only that, but not give us the same benefits. When a cop or a firefighter dies on the job, they get benefits and pay for life. EMS workers get 3 years salary. So the prophecy of us telling this city and this department that the chickens will come home to roost, you can't run EMS as a summer job, has now shown itself. I relate it to Tiresias because he speaks in riddles, but he's pretty clear. The people that are listening to him, Oedipus, can't hear it. He thinks he's speaking in riddles. We in the unions have not spoken, we feel like we must be speaking in riddles to these people. The thing that really troubles me is it's hubris. Hubris is what blinds and colors people's thoughts. The hubris that it's unacceptable. Dr. Gore works with doctors who will be doctors for life. You go to his hospital because you know you're going to be treated by somebody who has experience. But for the people who bring the hospital to you, it's not good enough to have years of experience. And the crime in the play would be if Oedipus did not learn the truth at the end. The crime in EMS would be if all these people who have been through this crazy experience, kids, I have 20 and 21-year-olds out there, that if we don't take care of them, if we don't nurture them, not only monetarily, but mentally, emotionally, and physically, they're gonna leave. And in 4 years or 5 years, when the next pandemic comes, we're not gonna have these people to come take care of everybody. Just like in Oedipus, he saw the truth, but imagine if he was shown love when people told him in the beginning. And that's what, what she's saying is correct,
Thank you so much, Anthony. Quisquea, I know you've been waiting a while. I don't know if you're there, but I think you are.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Quisqueya. Okay, so hi. My friends and I were actually like texting about what it meant to us, I guess. So send messages. So first, hello, and thank you for all your work. And I know that I'm not gonna lie, I was a bit moved by the play. And then when this happened after, I was like, I'm not ready to stop crying. And then you guys started talking, and I was like, I didn't mean like this. I didn't want to cry like this. And it was the things that you guys have to go through. I don't think I'd be able to handle it either. But to me, there was Oedipus. He was willing to kill people as long as he knew that he had no connection to them. And that's what like a lot of people are willing to do out here. They might not take the precautions because they think, oh, maybe I won't get it, or I'm safe, or I'll do this because there's no risk for me. But once the flip switched and he noticed he did have a connection to the people he killed, he affected people that in turn affected him back. He suddenly started to care. And that's something that I guess like we're numb to, caring for the lives of others, caring that other people also go through the things that we have to go through, and thinking that, oh, just because it's them, it shouldn't matter to us. My life matters only to me. And then my friend said that it reminds us all that we're all on the same level and that we're all humans. Because just because you're better off than someone who's living in the street, you're better off than a mid-waged family. Money won't keep you alive. You have to understand that the things that people go through, just because you're successful, doesn't make you more human or more, immune to what's going on. We're all in this together.
Right.
And that was my thoughts on everything.
That was
Sorry.
beautiful. Thank you so much. If this were some kind of college seminar, which it's not, I feel like you just nailed the most important line in the entire play, which is glossed over by most people when they hear it. And the line is, and then I killed them all. And he's talking about the people he met on the highway.
Yeah.
He talks about that act of killing them as if until that moment it hadn't mattered, because he'd been attacked or perceived that he was under a threat by those people. People have brought up our carceral state. People have brought up the way that we leave people to die of poverty, of lack of medical care, of racial oppression, all things have been wrong. But that line, and then I killed them all, only becomes significant to Oedipus when he realized that he killed his father. He killed the person who gave him life. He also killed the man who tried to kill him. And that intergenerational curse of violence played out in his family, and he became significant. But I really appreciate what you said, Quisqueya, about that lives aren't significant to us until we're touched, and they're our friends and our loved ones. And how can we extend our awareness of that into our lives beyond just simply wearing masks and taking precautions? How will that inform the future of how we live in this country, in this interconnected world? Sergio, I think you've been waiting for a long time, and I see that you're enjoying a glass of wine, and I welcome you to the conversation.
Oh, thank you. Wow, I didn't know. I thought it was only, thank you for inviting me. I mean, it's beautiful, like I am so humbled, like to hear to hear Oedipus, like so beautifully expressed by you guys. And the comments that you make, Anthony, they are so beautiful, like thank you for being in the front lines and being like a priest in these moments, that is so needed to have a heart, even as you go through the motions of doing what you have to do, disposing of the dead, or like just giving a little hope to the people that still are here with us. I mean, it's incredible, and to the question of what was Sophocles' idea, what was he entertaining in his mind, I think that it was a kind of a storm somehow, it was like, I don't know, like a plague must be like to be in the middle of a storm and not really being all that conscious about what's going on, even in your own mind, and as an intellectual or as an artist, you know, like just putting it all there, you know, and just to touch even on the most basic of taboos, you know, like to go to bed with your mother or to kill your father, you know, like, I mean, I don't know how it happened. I was thinking to ask you, even you guys, if you know that there was any historical, you know, background to this, but it's only like the poet that allows himself to be in that so free that he touches on the most untouchable of all subjects, you know, because the suffering is so great that he needs to express that with the most, you know, like outrageous of all subjects, you know. And so, you know, like I think that the redemption that can only come through beauty, even if it's, you know, like, I mean, tragedy. I mean, tragedy is only possible, it's only freeing because tragedy will make us free in that sense. You know, even if it's the devastation of the society as we know it, there will be some throughs of light, you know, like the light that comes through, like opening your eyes to the sun, you know, like that in itself is bleeding. It's like you cannot see, but only, and I think that real subject of all this tragedy is blindness, as you all were saying, you know, it's blindness itself. It's not anybody, it's not even Oedipus, it's blindness itself. You know, like we need to open our eyes, even if it's hurting us to the point of bleeding, you know. And it's true that the only act of freedom that Oedipus has, in a way, is to blind himself. It's like he recognizes, it's his only real act in the play. Like he recognizes that he's blind to that point, to the point that maybe throughout, you know, like depriving myself of these eyes that are not letting me see the truth, I am able to come through and see finally. And so he becomes a humble man that can start beginning to live again, you know. And so the hope of him is the hope of humanity. I mean, he's not any better or any worse than any of us. He really isn't. He's just, you know, taken hostage by all this delirium that is power and, you know, and richness and that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Sergio. I really appreciate everything you said and the beauty you brought to that. Paulette, I'll go over to you, and then sir, I see you with your wife in your house, and we'll come to you in just a second. But Paulette, up here,
Sure.
yes, please.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I wanted to respond a little bit to that. I think everybody, I mean, obviously because the play is focused on Oedipus,
yeah,
him being a leader. It's like we're talking about leadership, and I think that's the thing to examine as we're like thinking through this play. But the other characters, to me, to some extent, had hopeful characteristics and qualities in a way that Oedipus didn't. I totally agree with you, Sergio, about the fact that he's just like any of us, and I think there's like I ended up being like sympathetic towards him at the end after like going through a roller coaster of disliking him and then liking him, or liking him, disliking him, and then at the end disliking him, or liking him again. But I think like some of the other characters had hopeful qualities and were more complex, and in particular Chorus I think stuck out to me as that. But as I'm thinking about leadership, I think it's tied to what Joanne and others have said, that it's not necessarily about somebody like Oedipus or a leader by themselves. This is actually a conversation about everybody else, and the leaders in our life, like somebody like Oedipus or somebody like the mayor of New York City, like they will not be the leaders that we demand them to be unless we are the ones that are organized enough to make the demands of them. And so I think that's just something to keep in mind, that we were so focused on Oedipus throughout the play that there's other, I mean, how do we create a society that's not focused on the leader, I guess, is really the question. And we need to walk away from a tragedy that we're all experiencing collectively at this point, asking ourselves that the leaders that are in power right now are not the ones that we need to focus on. It's actually ourselves and our connections in our community, and how we build those connections.
Thank you so much, Paulette. The idea that Oedipus might be a distraction to a certain extent.
Yeah.
From the people who really matter and whose lives we should be focused on, and that we always get distracted, unfortunately. And maybe our media apparatus distracts us more and we become sort of complicit in it as well, that, you know, the briefings and the sort of the narrative of the leader, the paternalism of the leader who's going to lead us out of the mess. Maybe that whole conceit, that idea of the leader who's going to lead us out of the mess, who's a white man, and this instance, is the distraction from the thing that, you know, that we actually should be focusing on. Like, and I don't want to be political here more than we already have, but to say casting Jumaane Williams, which was something we started doing about 4 years ago when he joined us for our gun violence project in Brooklyn Public Library, casting our New York City public advocate as the chorus, intentionally. You know, he says, "My heart breaks for Thebes. The city is devastated by an evil disease. Our people are already suffering in such unthinkable misery. Must you exacerbate our pain by pouring fuel on the flames?" And those could have been Jumaane's words. Those are probably words that Jumaane has said in some way or form in the last 2 months as he advocated for people to pay attention to the people that we should be paying attention to and not the distraction. And so I really appreciate what we brought on. We've got a few more people. We only have 7 more minutes, and we at Theater of War Productions like to end on time, not to tie a bow on the conversation, but to say this launches the beginning of a much larger digital initiative by us. And we didn't know if it was going to work. So thank you all for showing us that we can do it this way, because now we're going to do at least 20 performances in the next 9 months like this tonight, where we're going to open up to really powerful dialogue about a bunch of different subjects. The first time we scheduled a Theater of War performance, it was for the military back in 2008. And we scheduled a 45-minute discussion for US Marines, and the discussion lasted 3.5 hours and it had to be cut off at midnight. And we're not going to do that tonight because we're in the middle of a work week, in the middle of a pandemic, and people have lots on their plates. But we are going to invite you back on Eventbrite to subsequent performances, and we hope you all will join us. But while we're here, I see, Thomas, you've been waiting for a while. Maybe you'd like to jump in, and we'll come down after you to Yemstrak and Vidi, who've also been waiting for a while. Yes, please, sir.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about Oedipus.
That's okay.
I'll talk about Oedipus. It seems to me that the fundamental thing about Oedipus in this play is he cannot know who he is. He doesn't know who he is, and he cannot know who he is until the end of the play. And that the combination of his ignorance, his fundamental lack of self-knowledge, and his arrogance is tremendously destructive. The combination of a lack of self-knowledge, and he is not someone who is able to look into himself. For him, all power goes outward from him. He looks out at the world and controls it and so on. And so I see that scene with Tiresias as being the key to the play, because it's a clash between someone who understands himself always as acting out into the world and changing things and controlling people, and who he feels he should be honored for that, and someone who is entirely inward, who is blind and cannot see, and receives his knowledge from somewhere else and lets it pass through him. So when people were talking about the hope at the end of the play, for me, the hope at the end of the play is the fact that Oedipus, in blinding himself, moves toward Tiresias. And he essentially, in Sophocles' last play, Oedipus Colonus, he becomes Tiresias. So that at the very end of Oedipus Rex, the message to me is that self-knowledge is where you have to start, and that compassion follows from self-knowledge and the lack of arrogance. That's enough for me.
Thank you so much, Thomas. I appreciate that. Listening to you talk, I was thinking there probably were a lot of Oedipuses in the audience in Athens at the time that they were watching.
Think about like that.
And so, you know, there's a lot of Oedipuses probably in our audience too, although we did a really, really vigorous job of trying to curate an audience with skin in the game that represented a lot of the other characters as well, including the chorus and the people who didn't have voices in the play as well, of which there were many. Vidi, you've been waiting for a while, I believe, and I think you're down at least at the bottom of my screen. We have time for you and maybe one other person to jump into this.
I just kind of wanted to add, like, at the end, how he realizes, I mean, like, the whole community is, like, suffering at the beginning, right? And that's kind of what drives him to want to figure out the truth. And as he gets closer to it, like, he realizes how much damage this could do to him, yet he continues to do it. And, like, even at the end, like, that whole concept of blindness that everyone was talking about kind of relates to, like, you know, us now and how people are forcing themselves to be blind to the truth, because I feel like a lot of people don't want to, like, process the severity of kind of like the situation we're in, because like no one's obviously like been through something like this, but like I mean, like especially like kids that are like younger, like no one's been through a worldwide pandemic. So I think people are like forcing themselves to be blind to the truth and don't want to like come together, because we really haven't come together as a world before this, you know. And like my friend Sahiti, she also wanted to add how like Tiresias, she I mean he was he was like actually blind, yet he was the one who needed truth, and he was the one who was trying to convince Oedipus, who wasn't actually blind, yet he forced himself to not believe it and just took it out on him. So I think that's really applicable to kind of how we're acting in this situation of like the coronavirus and everything.
Thank you so much. Yemsrock, we're going to go to you, and then Elena. No pressure. You're going to be the last person to speak in this discussion, so no pressure to sum everything up in just a second with one perfect statement, but just prepare yourself.
Thank you.
But Yemsrock, I know you've been waiting for a little while, and we'd love to come to you in the short time that we have left.
Well, hello, first of all, from Germany here. And I wanted to say that I've known this play for so long, but I've never really recognized it as one that's really talking about a plague, because all the other circumstances around it are so like bold, and you remember really that it was his dad he killed, and it was his mom he slept with and who killed herself in the end. And I think it's really interesting because the whole story is a fantasy. The plague, or every plague that we have ever experienced, didn't stop because somebody found out something about themselves and left the city. It's an ever-growing process where we try to find out a cure, find out some kind of vaccine, and help one another in the process of doing so. But it's not by the act of one, but the act of a collective that we achieve something like that. Something that I found interesting.
Hello to Germany. Thank you for staying up so late, Yemsrock. I really believe that, appreciate that. Just to say, the myth of the leader who suffers with singularity on behalf of the city and carries its burden on his shoulders. I appreciate you rejecting that myth. At least I hear you, that collectivism is the only way out. And it's not by the exile of a person, it's by the collective working together to find a cure, but also once we find that cure, to address all of the things that the disease exposed. And so it's really wonderful to hear from someone on the other side of the planet, and I really appreciate what you had to say. And Elena, we're going to come to you. We're at 9:30, but I know you're going to bring us home with with an amazing last word.
I hope so. Well, something that I was thinking about when I first saw that this project was going to be happening, I was immediately thinking about just the act of adaptation in general. Like some of the other students here, I studied classics, I studied a lot of different things, and the idea of adaptation was always interesting to me. And then Brian, you actually started it out really well, bringing that thought back to mind at the very beginning when you spoke about how being able to adapt is something that is a very human capability. And I was thinking about that also with the question that you posed about why would Sophocles have written the play in his time? Because I was also thinking about why was it so relevant for us to be speaking about it now? And I think one of the refrains that I encountered a lot in my studies was the idea that media is a cultural forum. It is a place where we bring our anxieties and our hopes, as many of the speakers have talked about, to explore them and to flesh them out. And I think, as some of the other people have said, plagues have always happened. The wailing has always happened. In the fever in Philadelphia in 1793, they stopped ringing the bells after a certain period of time because they used to ring them every time they brought a new body in, but it became too much for people. This is a story that would have resonated with people then as much as it does now. And I was just thinking again about the ability to adapt and thinking about how that is actually part of the answer to the riddle of the Sphinx that Oedipus answers. What walks one way in the morning, another later, and another later? It is man. It is man who can adapt to all of these different forms. And Oedipus's undoing later is that he loses that ability to adapt. He no longer thinks differently than what is expected in front of him. He doesn't say nothing does that, and then he wouldn't have been able to answer the Sphinx. He says he used to be able to think in a way that was clear and not simply his bias and his hubris and what he wanted it to be. It was, well, let me think outside of this. And I think that it is that blindness that comes with time, that comes with power, that comes with complacency, that is his undoing. It is the city's undoing. It is the people around him's undoing. And it is in reaching for things like hope and from things and things like compassion and things like truth that inspire people to continue to try and to continue to change things. And as Joanne said, to not simply go back to normal or accept what normal is, but to move forward from that and choose something else. I apologize if that was a bit of a ramble. I hope it sort of summarized what everyone was sort of talking about. And the last thing I just want to say is to thank everyone. In classics, one of the things that we studied a lot is the concept of xenia, which is the guest-host relationship, the idea of inviting people into your home and conducting yourself in the right way. And I wanted to thank the performers for bringing us into their homes to see their performances in not the stage that has a little bit of distance, and for all of the panelists who brought us in, and for all of the other contributors who have brought them into their messy homes during this strange time. And I hope that, to bring it back to what I think Anthony said, there's a little bit of hope left at the end. Another Greek myth is Pandora. There's a tiny bit of hope left at the bottom. And so I hope that I've been inspired by everyone today, and the old gods, the new babes and everything. And I'm very grateful to have been able to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elena. That's a perfect last word. And the rambling part is actually the best part, because that's what we asked you all to do, and to think out loud with each other in a space where we could listen without judgment, and to hear each other's truths, and also to bear witness to each other's thinking. And I appreciate you modeling that for us, and all the students who came. I really appreciate all the young people who were part of this discussion. There are at least 121 other people we didn't get to, and I hope you'll come to the next event. And through this technology that I think is just miraculous, we'll find ways to connect in ways that we weren't able to connect before. And that's the exciting opportunity of this moment, born out with what Anthony said earlier about being in contact with the fragility of human life, and then appreciating it for every second that we have together and what it's worth. So after an early performance, I started ending with a benediction, and I won't fully end because I know Paulette wanted to thank, some of the panelists wanted to say thank you, but the benediction at the end of every Theater of War performance is two parts. And part one is simply this: if you related to anything that's been said over the last 2.5 hours here on Zoom for our premiere of the Oedipus Project, know this: you are not alone. You're not alone in your living room. You are not alone in your bedroom. You're not alone in your home office. You're not alone in your bathroom. You are not alone in your car. You are not alone across the country and the world. We've brought together thousands of people who've been here with us for this 2.5 hours. Most critically, you are not alone across time. And if that's all you heard, then our work will be well served. But if you heard more and it made you want to talk about it with people you love, or perhaps people you haven't yet learned to love, and you're open to having that conversation, I hope that this experience of us coming together radiates out of this virtual space and into physical spaces all over the country and the world, not just now, but for weeks and months to come. After an early performance of Theater of War, a female general stood up and took on a question that I often ask military audiences. Why do you think Sophocles wrote this play, I asked. And she said, I think he wrote the play to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. And we hope we did a little of both for everyone here tonight who tuned in. Comfort that we can come together in isolation against all odds, that we can communicate with each other in this way. Comfort that we can take comfort in listening to human stories that transcend time and make connections. Afflicted that there's so much more work to be done to address the characters in our lives who may not have even had a voice in this play, afflicted by the reality that there might be people to our left and our right, or just outside of where we live, who are struggling, who need our help and need our attention and need us not to be blind to them and their affliction. And it's with that sense of affliction that we leave you, with the hope that it leads to more conversations like this, more connection, and it lifts us out of this temporary, but I think important moment of isolation that we're now experiencing. And with that, I just, Paulette, I know you wanted to say goodbye.
Yeah, I wanted to just shout out all the college students that spoke and the panelists, because everybody who spoke was amazing, but also the public advocate. I should have said this at the beginning, but Jemani's been working with the organization I work with for years and years, and it's just been like such an amazing leader. And so I just wanted to say that. Thank you, Jemani.
Thank you so much, Paulette. And thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, Dr. Gore. Thank you to the 104 people who still had their hands up. Thank you all for tuning in to the first performance of the Oedipus Project. Go back to our website, theaterofwar.com, for the more announcements to come. Follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter at Theater of War. And please come back. It's all free because conversations about human suffering can't be transactional. And we hope to see you all again very soon. God bless, be safe. And it was really a privilege spending tonight with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.
And this is the part where there would be uproarious applause, but we know that applause is happening in apartments and houses across the country, not for the performance, but for what people shared. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great night.
Thank you.